We have a lot going on this week. Only two assignments, but it still feels like a lot. But I want you to be thinking about the fact that each week we are building to our final assignment. So, what we work on each week is part of something larger. What we're learning is going to be building into what we continue to learn. So, I don't want you to stress that you have to process and understand absolutely all of it right away. You have to know all the nuances. Rather, we're asking questions and we're saying, what could that be like? So this week we are looking at publishing industry processes. And we're going to do that with two assignments. So we have on our agenda today looking at the topic and outcomes for this particular week, what we're reading, and we only have one viewing assignment, thank goodness, right? We can cut it down a little this week. And then we're looking at our discussion of, where's the hang up, what's happening with these things. I think it actually had a dash, so we're going to add that. And then we're looking at our milestone 2, which is publishing company sales plan. And I've decided not to include that full preview today, but it is in multiple places for you to look at, and you can also see how our session works into it. So let's look at what our overall aim is. Each week, each session, we need to think about not only the assignment that we're doing, but like why we're doing it. We often put a lot of pressure on ourselves to fully process every single possible facet, but what we're always looking at is the big and the little picture, so the macro and the micro. This week, we want to gain a better understanding of all the steps that go into publishing. That doesn't mean that you are a publisher. It doesn't mean you own a publishing company. It doesn't mean you take on all of these jobs. But what we're doing in a lot of these classes, this is one that is going to lead into others that focus on similar issues as you get into your junior level courses. What we're doing is we're saying, this is an industry. There are all of these people. There are all of these jobs. There are all of these potential connections to make. And if we walk in and we say, who's there? What could possibly be in this space? Then we're not going to do our best. We're not going to feel super confident. We're not going to just be aware of a lot of the moving pieces. And that's what we want. We're not going to be those people, but we are going to say, I get that there's an industry, and an industry encompasses many facets. And I want to have some clues about that. I want to know sort of what could be happening. So, what kind of deadlines do publishers have? What does that look like on their side? What should our deadlines then look like to make things shelf ready, to be in stores, to get to our readers? And of course, one of the first things that we have to do, besides figuring out, what we're going to write, is that we've got to pitch it. We've got to tell people, an agent, editor, publishing team, any and everyone, what it is. And so we're going to get to that. But we still want to say, well, if I were going to pitch something, who would I be pitching to? And that's what we're going to start thinking about. So our overall outcome for this session is that we want to identify the key hangups in that book production timeline, because we want to know, yes, some of these things are about us. What are we accomplishing? What is our timeline? But other things are going to be about other people, and we need to be aware of their part within the whole scheme. We want to write a sales plan based on a realistic timeline, and we'll get to this in detail, but we're starting this process. We're saying, well, what would that include? What would a sales plan include? What is realistic timelines? Because we're not just talking about other people in that spectrum, but ourselves. What exactly do we think we can do within these spaces? Because those timelines are going to be different for each of us, and they're going to be different for different projects. And we want to present a niche-specific pitch to promote the acquisition of a project for publishing and our sales to a Christian-based company. So we have some details here. We've started to look at our niche. We started to say, where do I fit in? Where do I think I am best suited? And then we're starting to say, well, who would I reach out to? Who could that be? Remember, this is imaginary. This is creative. But the part of being creative is saying, who would fit into these spaces? And going through that process is going to give us a much stronger position. It's going to help us understand that there are steps, and this is a great space to make a muddle of it and try things and say, well, that didn't work. That's good. We want all of that. We want to do a bad job just as much as we want to do a good job, because we are going to learn from all of those spaces. So remember, we're asking questions. We're saying, what is this? And then we're trying things out. So reading and viewing, we are going to read a lot in Wool's book. There are going to be other books like Wool's that you're going to read in different classes that feel like they are really pushing your boundaries. They're really stretching you to figure out how these people are communicating about things that maybe you're not as comfortable with. Maybe the math side, maybe the timeline side, maybe later when you get to entertainment law and you're saying, oh my goodness, look at all these court cases. I don't even know how to read that. These are all places where we're stretching ourselves to say that exists, that's out there, and there are people who are really good at it. So we want to have an understanding that it's out there, and we also want to understand when we need to call in the support system. So I would be calling someone for the law part. I understand that it's out there. I'm starting to process what's happening. I understand things like plagiarism, but I'm still going to say, you know what? There are aspects to these contracts that I just don't get. I'm going to have a lawyer look those over. That's what we want. We want to say where have I stretched to learn, and where have I stretched to where I recognize that my skill set is not going to be tapped into in this space. So we're looking at those ideas, publishing for profit and getting in there. And then we're also looking at Joanna Pinn's article, Choose the Right Categories and Keywords. Again, these are just things we're picking up. We may change those over time. We're going to grow in that knowledge. There are actually companies you can hire who do these kinds of things, who find all those keywords for you, and who also set you up to be the first clickbait on the clickable search on a Google search. There are specific people for just about everything. But how would we know that if we didn't even know about keywords? So that's our first step. We're saying, hey, there are keywords. Let's go explore it. For viewing, we have a 36-minute video here with Larry Whedon, who is talking about being inside a publisher's editorial department. So an exciting masterclass there. These are great videos to help us connect with all these different places. And I don't know about you, but I love hearing as well as reading everything. So I have got a lot of slides because I want to look at lots of different aspects of these two assignments. We just have two. We have our discussion and we have our submitted assignment. So here's our discussion. We're starting to think about things like a pitch. A pitch is a common term that we use to describe what it could look like. In fact, there was a great program at one of the schools where I was at, where we had across all of the different courses, all the different departments, we would ask for a 3-minute pitch. So how could you describe all of your research, all of the things that you are interested in school? How could you talk about all of those in 3 minutes? And what if you're in economics and you're trying to tell me over here in English what your research is about? How do you get that across to me? How do you help me understand something that is outside my usual scope of reference, my usual frame of reference? And that led to some amazing discussions. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're saying, if I had to reach out to someone, thankfully we are writers talking to editors and agents, so we are in the same field, but how would I get that person on board? How would I help them see where I'm going to go with it and what I'm going to do? So what we're going to do is anticipate our potential audience and identify a company that could be a good fit for us. Remember, we're not sending it to them, but we're starting to say, is there a company I love walking into? Like, do I love going to that local independent bookstore? Is there a local Christian bookstore that I really enjoy getting to be a part of? Is there a Christian publishing company that I'm super interested in? And maybe you're really busy this week, so you grab the first one. What would that look like? How would I connect with them? So there are two parts, a video and a text-based component. So let's go explore. We're going to look at two sides. We're going to look at, what are we telling them? What does that look like? And we're also going to look at the technical side of how do we create that. So videos first. Oh my goodness. So we're talking about a 5 to 10 minute video. I have a YouTube channel. I have quite a bit on it. I'm adding this to it as well. But if you went back to my very first videos, you'd probably giggle a little. I'm giggling a little. I have learned so much by doing videos. And one of the things that I started off with in my work was saying, how much time am I taking? I honestly always aim for the shorter timeline because people only have so much attention to give, and I want to be as succinct as possible. That's hard for me because I have a lot of words trapped inside my body, and I'm always trying to get them all out and trying to figure out how to not just spill them like a dam being broken open. So one of the things I've done is I will practice. So I'll do a video, I'll do a timer on it. I may not even record in that sense. I may just walk through my PowerPoint with a timer on and say, well, what kind of time did I look at? Where do I need to trim? Where do I need to add? What did that feel like? I've also done more than one recording. So as you can tell, that's a lot of steps. And I don't necessarily want you to feel like you have to do 4 recording samples of 5 minutes each and all the processes with that. And then suddenly you've spent 8 hours on this assignment. I don't want it to feel overwhelming like that. But I want you to think about some things you could do to sort of help yourself out there. Like, one, are you comfortable with the camera pointing at you? That's taken me a lot of work to get used to. So much work. One thing I do on my laptop is I'll have my PowerPoint here, and sometimes I have just above it the camera going, and so I'll be reading and looking at the PowerPoint, but just doing a face-to-face video. And so I'll have notes that I'm reading and scrolling through while also being able to just look at a person. Sometimes I put a video to the side, so I'll put a video over here, and then I'll put my PowerPoint to the left. Sometimes I have both of those up. There are lots of different ways to sort of explore that space and get comfortable. There are times when I'm not as comfortable with just the video, so I will do a half and half where I'll show some slides and things like that. That's something you could think about, because I personally love being able to read along and to see some highlights. So think about what you are playing with, sort of play around with it and see what you think. So there's some specifics we want to share. Who are you? That's first, right? What are you doing? What kind of work are you creating? What are you going to tell us about? Provide a working title, a brief summary. What is this going to be about? As this keynote says here, be sure to include how your writing contributes to God's kingdom, because remember, we are aiming for that Christian publishing or bookstore companies. Identify the niche. So I am, Claire Barker. I am writing based on years of teaching English. Now I'm switching to creative styles, and I know what builds a great story because of all those years studying literature and working on papers. My working title is working title, because it's about working and titling your things. So you can see, you can play with this. My niche, I'm writing post-apocalyptic literature for young adults, and I'm talking about that working space because they are unfamiliar with these areas. And since I'm working with a young adult audience, I've got to be on that trending, cutting edge. Share how your project will stand out among others. Let them know, yes, I understand, X person is in my niche, they're in my category. And people are going to see that, no matter how many books are in a category, readers are reading them faster than we write them. It may take me months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to write that novel. But when someone reads it, it's not taking them 10 years to read it, unless they put it aside and never look at it again. Instead, it's taking them days, weeks, maybe a month or two, but they're reading it so much more quickly than it took me to write it. There is room for you. So recognize where you're going to be on that bookshelf, but that you are creating a space that's necessary. You are adding to that space. So try some things with your camera, explore some of these details, maybe make a PowerPoint or some notes for yourself that can be off to the side to look at. Things like that really help me keep on track. But again, it's about what works for you. So I need this kind of structure. Do you? What would that look like for you? Now let's talk videos. So our assignment talks about using Kaltura, and I have some screen grabs on the next few pages. You can look over here to get support. You can go to that resource course, so the CAG Student Resources course. It's going to be, if you click on those 9 dots, 9 squares, it's going to always show up on there. If you go to content and you scroll down to technology and quick guides, it's going to have a whole slew of things about Kaltura, which is great. Sometimes you can download Kaltura and use it on your laptop or desktop and then upload that. I don't do that. I find that really frustrating. So what I do is I use the Express Capture. So when I'm within a discussion board post, I will click on this funny set of symbols. It's sort of play, pause, something, and stop, if you think about it in that sense. When I click on that, it gives me some options, and I always choose Kaltura. And then when it opens up another section, so as you can see, that's all in the back. The original discussion board post, I'm still in that window essentially. I always choose add new and an express capture. So if I chose the Kaltura capture, it would go to the Kaltura app that I have downloaded to my laptop. I don't like to do that, so I like to use the Express Capture. It records it within that web browser screen, and then I'm able to embed it straight from there, and I don't have to create other spaces. If it's asking you to purchase something, then something's gone wrong. Let's connect. Let's look at what we're looking at, because it should all be free. However, something else I want you to think about here. Notice the media upload item right there. Sometimes I use QuickTime like I'm doing right now. I'm on my laptop. I'm a Mac user. I'm using QuickTime. I'm going to upload my video to MediaSpace. And I can grab them here as well. I can grab a media upload here. There are multiple ways to do all of these things. So if you want to use Kaltura and you want to explore that, go check out all of these items here with the content under our resources course. But if you want to use what's part of your computer system, and so for me, that's QuickTime, but there are lots of others. You can record on your computer or on your phone, and then you can upload that video to MediaSpace. So you can upload as well to things like YouTube or even from Dropbox. There are lots of different ways to navigate these. So if Kaltura feels like it's just too much of a struggle, start with other parts of it and work your way up as you learn more and more about videos and the internet and all these different programs. So please don't feel like you have to do one or the other. So you can explore everything Kaltura there. You can do the Express Capture feature so you don't download anything. You can also upload any kind of video to your MediaSpace library. So sometimes, yes, I actually do record with my phone. I think our welcome video for this class, I did that. So I recorded with my phone. I uploaded that to my laptop and my cloud, and then I put it on MediaSpace. So it's a Kaltura video now. So lots of different ways to get in there. Please don't feel pressured to do any one particular one. So try things out. Again, remember, this isn't about perfection. You are not like entering some great race where you have to win. Instead, you're saying, oh my goodness, this is a lot of stuff. This is lots and lots and lots of stuff. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And then we have discussions where we each have different issues and challenges and different successes, and we share that with each other, and we all learn and grow. The next part is that we want to have a text component. We want to write 1 to 2 paragraphs about all of this. Some things to include: identification of the company you see as your potential audience and why you picked it. And remember, these aren't make or break questions. I picked them because they were a Christian bookstore and their name started with A. That's an answer. That's okay. What insights did you gain during this process? So again, we're talking about what our successes were and what our challenges were and what you might do differently. So you're learning things. The same way I've mentioned that I learned about timing, that I learned that I need something like this PowerPoint to keep me focused. All these different things are things I've learned from my pitches and for my videos, for all kinds of different spaces. And that's what you're doing as well. You're not being perfect. You are exploring. Next, we have our publishing company sales plan. And again, I have some video, some images, some screen captures from the book that Wall has written. So again, you're not going to do this perfectly. This isn't necessarily what would ever actually end up being your sales plan. But how many of us knew what a sales plan was yesterday or the day before? That's the point. We're saying, what's a production to sales plan? What's that look like? We're going to draft one. There are some great examples. We're talking about using like Excel or Word, and we want to start asking ourselves, where am I? I am the writer, right? And I have some control over the editing phase, but I may not have control over all of these things. And I'm starting to say, within my space of what I can control, what kind of time do I need? And then within the space that other people have, how much time do they typically need? So I'm going to need to perhaps give my work to the editor. How long does an editor typically take? How much are they going to charge me if they have a tight turnaround time? So if I want it back in 48 hours, what's that going to look like cost-wise versus a couple of weeks? These are different elements that we're just starting to say, okay, that exists. That could happen. What does that look like? What could that look like? It's not perfect, it's not specific, it's not exactly what's going to happen, but we're starting to recognize these different phases. So here are some images of what the publishing timeline looks like for Wall in this particular book. He's talking about years of work and different elements here. So he has lots of different pieces going into it. And again, that's what we're saying. Like, what would the 16th month look like for this particular work? Could I squeeze more of this into a year? Do I feel like my particular work could be a lot faster than that? Do I feel like my particular work is going to take a lot more in-depth work, so it's going to take longer than this? Those are the kinds of things. What seems reasonable to you? What kind of questions does this raise so that you can bring them up to the rest of us? Because we're doing this, but we're also writing about it. We're also sharing what we're thinking in this process. So we're filling out, sort of creating and filling out some spreadsheet sort of forms, but we're also saying, hey, this made me think about, and then fill in the blank with that. Another aspect, on pages 211 through 213, Wall has the basics of the marketing plan. So he starts to put in things about subsidiary rights, publicity, promotion, advertising. And if you're following different authors on social media, I'm finding it fascinating to watch a person I followed for a long time move from blogging and doing Patreon and Facebook and Instagram into the publishing world, because she's published her first book now and is with big publishers, and it is fascinating. She's had to include another person because she can't both be creative and go to all of these events and then schedule all of these things. So now she has a person who supports her with all of that and helps with scheduling and all these things. So we're starting to say, what could that look like? What if we gave ourselves $10,000? What would it look like within these spaces for what we could afford or not afford? And yours may mimic this quite a lot. Creating these spreadsheets is a big step. Having them that you can, as templates that you can work with, that's an incredible step to take. But we're starting that whole process of what it could look like. So our next part, remember, use what you can and then build off of that. We're going to summarize that sales plan. So we're going to have a description of at least one campaign to exploit subsidiary rights. We're going to look at that in a second. We're going to identify the most likely hangups of where we're going to get caught up and why. So is it us? Do we think it'll be hard to do the turnaround? Do we think we're going to get caught up in printing because we want lots of images? Like, what kind of things could happen? And an explanation of how to avoid those or how to work through them. Again, these are imagined. We're not actually doing this, but we're starting to say things could happen. How would we problem solve? And maybe we can raise that as well so that we have this discussion between you and I of what that looks like. And then in the end, we're going to have 1 to 2 pages with these charts of some sort where we're laying out what things could look like. And then we're going to have another 2 to 3 pages talking about all of those issues. So for instance here, subsidiary rights. There are some incredible things. These are all in Wall's book. Things like book clubs, serial rights, foreign rights, mass market rights. What would that look like? How much would things take from us? Like in my imagination, because I don't 100% know, I haven't walked through every stage of this in depth as like my own self experiencing it, so I can only learn from others at this point. Mass market seems like something I sort of sell off and I go on my merry way. But what about book clubs? Would book clubs then spawn not just a specific edition of the book, perhaps, that has specific book club questions in it, but would it also spawn a tour of some sort where I attend book clubs or where I go to Zoom meetings with book clubs? Like, what other aspects could be involved in these? So if I pick one, what could that look like? So the main thing is you are exploring, you're trying, you're seeing what's out there. There is no pressure to do this perfectly because there is no perfection. There is just asking questions and learning. So try some things out, see what happens. Don't hesitate to send me a copy and say, am I on the right track? Could you help me out with this? And I will do that. So I will see you out there as we explore everything about this publishing process with our sales and marketing.